Do a review on the Kutas Sichas in Chelek Chav Zayin. This is the first Sicha for the Parsha Shemini. We're learning Leilu Nishmas Levi Yitzchak ben Rabbi Chaim Tzvi Tehei Nishmas Yitzrura B'Tzrei HaChaim. This is a Sicha really on the Rambam. Actually, the Rebbe right away is in the Sicha. There's a dot on the word Shemini, and these are referencing the Pesukim of our Parsha, which is Perik Tes, Posik Hey, and Posik Chav Daled, which connects this Sikha to this Parsha. Basically, the Rebbe discusses a Rambam over here. It's a very intricate, a detailed, scholarly Sikha. The Rebbe brings the Rambam, as we know, that a person who is Tomei, who is impure, varies if he touched an insect or other impurities that make the person impure, and he happens to be in the Beis Hamikdash. So the halacha is that he has to leave as soon as possible. If he delays and he doesn't leave right away, then he is violating the prohibition of being Tomei while in the Beis Hamikdash. If he leaves immediately, then he doesn't violate the prohibition. But if he delays, then he violates the prohibition. The Rebbe will be explaining the source of the Rambam from the Gemara, and there's a lot of detailed, interesting questions that the Rebbe goes through. The Rebbe will make a big chiddush at the end because of the various different delays that a person can have. One of them is just delay time-wise. The other delay would be that he will prostrate himself while he is in the Beis Hamikdash instead of leaving right away. And the other delay is he doesn't take the shortest way out, but rather he goes a longer way out. These are all different delays. And the Rebbe will discuss when a person, actually we learned the halacha that if a person prostrates himself in the direction of the Beis Hamikdash, which is towards the west, where the Kodesh HaKadoshim is, if he prostrates himself in the direction to the west, so that in of itself, by definition, will be considered a delay because he is doing an action of prostrating himself. If, on the other hand, if he prostrates himself in the other direction towards the east, which is towards the exit, that in of itself does not qualify as a delay for prostrating, but over there, for the Hishtachavo, over there, it also has to meet a certain time frame, how long the Hishtachavoya, the prostrating, takes him. And only then will it be considered delaying in the Beis Hamikdash while he is Tomei. And the Rebbe will be Mechadesh the different possibilities, what happens when he delays and he prostrates to the direction of the east, not in the regular way, whether it is because of delay, or is it because he prostrated, or is it both? As the Rebbe will be mechadish, that the delay makes the prostration a prostrated. Rebbe will be mechalik whether a chatzishir, whether it's osir or not, is very, very interesting, but it's a lot of details and of halten kop. You have to keep focused, stay focused on. There's going to be a lot to learn and explain here. Hopefully, B'Se'ayta Dishmaya will be able to explain the Sikha to the extent the time allows, because it is really a very long explanation. Okay. And this connection to the pasuk is because to Shemini is because part of the delay that the what is the shear of the delay? So the Gemara quotes and the Rambam quotes from some psukim which talk about the people they prostrated and they praised Hashem, which is also in the parsha when the fire came down on the Mizbeach. The psukim that the Rambam and the Gemara will bring down is the psukim of Divrei Hayomim Beis, in which it discusses when the Beis Hamikdash was built by Shlomo HaMelech. Over there too, is similar to what happened in the parsha, that they saw the fire came down from the heaven and the glory of Hashem filled the Mishkan. Over there, it filled the Beis Hamikdash. So they prostrated themselves, and this is the connection to the parsha, the psukim that the Rebbe mentions in our parsha. But the rest of it is just the discussion in the Rambam. Let's go try to do it step by step. Aleph. In Hilchus Bias Hamikdash, that's in the laws of the Rambam, where he talks about entering into the Mikdash, Zog der Rambam, so the Rambam says, as when einer is nit mehr geworden bim Mikdash, if a person became Tomei while he was in the Mikdash, is der din, so the halacha is, the law is, as Yimahir v'yivahel v'yetze b'derech kitzoro. Very quickly and very urgently, he should go out in the shortest way possible. He should hastily and yivahel in a very urgent way, and he should go out the shortest way possible. That is because it happened an accident to him that he became Tomei, and now he has to leave in the quickest way. Now, the Rambam continues, V'asur loi lishhois, it is prohibited for the person to delay, to tarry and stay over there in the Beis Hamikdash, or to prostrate himself, which is what people did when they were in the Beis Hamikdash. But he has to leave, so he can't delay, he can't prostrate himself. And he's also not allowed to go in a long way. So any of these three things, whether to delay, that is just to take his time, or to prostrate himself, as we'll see, that's even if it does not take up any time. But just the fact that he prostrate, he's not allowed to do that. Or to go a longer way. What happens if a person does do that? Then he will be chayev achatos, because he is violating the prohibition of not being in the Beis Hamikdash while he's Tomei. If he leaves right away, then he's not violating the law. But if he delays, and he either delays or he prostrates himself, or he doesn't go the shortest route out, so then he would be violating, and he would be chayav achatos. So what is the shear really, we say when a person delays? How much is the delay? So the Rambam says, "Uvegen dem shir fun shihiyah." How much is the amount that the person should delay? And also, unhishtachavo. And what is the shear of prostrating? How long does that take? Paskin the Rambam rules. And the Rambam says, "V'kamo shiur shihiyosei." So, what is the amount of the delay? So the Rambam says it is kidei likros. That is the time that it takes to read. And this is the pasuk of Divrei Hayomim Beis in Perik Zayin. That's pasuk Gimel. Over there, the pasuk says that when the people witnessed that the fire that came down and consumed the oila and the shlomim, so it says in the pasuk, "Vayichru apayim arzo." So the Bnei Yisrael, they kneeled with their face towards the ground, and the pasuk says al haritzpa, on the floor, vayishtachavu, and they prostrated, v'hoides la Hashem ki tov, and they thanked to Hashem for His good, ki lo'olam chazdei, for His kindness is eternal. That's the pasuk. That's the pasuk that from Divrei Yomim Beis. And the Rambam concludes, V'zehu shiur ha'ishtachavoya. This is the amount of prostrating. And this is to be understood, as we will see later on, if you prostrate yourself towards the Beis Hamikdash, towards the Kodesh HaKadoshim, towards the west, over there, as the Gemara will say, over there we don't need a shiur of hishtachavoya. Over there, just prostrating yourself, that is the act, with whatever it takes, the time of the act. If you prostrated yourself over there, you would be violating the prohibition, because that is a delay. But the shiur of the hishtachavoya, that is when you're not really prostrating yourself towards the west, towards the Kodesh HaKadoshim. That's when you're prostrating yourself towards the east, outside of which is not really prostration. That's not a regular way to prostrate, because you got to be facing the Kodesh HaKadoshim. But in that case, the shiur of hishtachavoya is, if you did delay and it took you the time, as the Rambam says, the shiur to read from Vayichru Apayim Arza until the end of the pasuk over there, V'hoides Lashem ki tov ki lo'olam chazdei, that's the shiur. The pasuk over there, before the pasuk talks about Vayichru Apayim Arza, as we will see, this is the whole discussion. The Sikha, the pasuk starts over there that the Bnei Yisrael saw that the fire came down from Shemayim and it consumed the korbanos, and then the pasuk says, and all the B'yidin witnessed that, and Vayichru Apayim Arza, the quote of the Rambam from Divrei Yomim Beis, from the middle of the pasuk to the end of the pasuk, and this is the Shirish Tachavoya. So basically, the Rambam gives us the amount of how long one must not delay in the Beis Hamikdash, and also the shear of the Ishtachavoya, what is the shear of prostrating yourself. And as I explained, as we'll see later on from the Gemara, that the shear for prostrating is only necessary when you're not really prostrating in the right direction. But if it's prostrating, the Ishtachavoya is towards the Kodesh HaKadoshim, towards the west. So over there, there is no shear, just the act. If you prostrated, you would be chayiv, a korban, because, or the chiyuvim for going in tamei into the Beis Hamikdash is a lav. Okay, but that's the words of the Rambam that we quoted. Now the question is, what is the source of the Rambam? And the Kesef Mishnah brings the Lashon of the Rambam. Now, it's understood that we cannot be mechayiv a person, whether it's the Korban Chatos B'Shoigig or it's Malchus for the delaying. Again, the chiyuvim that are associated with staying in the Beis Hamikdash while you're tamei, we can't obligate the person according to the more stringent opinion, because we can't make a chiyuv. We go by the most lenient opinion. So here, the Kesef Mishnah will quote from the Gemara that there is two opinions, and it almost seems like that the Rambam used the more stringent opinion, and he says you would be chayiv chatos even for less time than the longer opinion brought down in the Gemara. And the issue the Kesef Mishnah has, and the question that he has, is why would the Rambam paskin, as the Rambam does, like the more strict opinion? If it's a machloikes, we can't rule like the more strict opinion. We should rule like the most lenient opinion. And therefore, the Kesef Mishnah is going to have two interpretation, and he's going to show that unlike what it seems on the surface, the opinion that the Rambam quotes is actually the more lenient opinion. I know there's a lot of words without context, but let's just look inside. Zog der Kesef Mishnah. So the Kesef Mishnah says, as der Moker von Divrei HaRambam is in Meseches Shavuos, that the source for the words of the Rambam is in the Tractate Shavuos. Vu es state. So what does it state over there in the Gemara? So the Gemara says over there, Kamo shiur shehiyah. How much is the amount of the delay? So pligi bo Rabbi Yitzchok bar Nachmoni v'chad di'imei. Chulu. The Gemara brings there a series of different possible Ameroyim who said the halacha. So it's just, we don't quote the whole thing. It's Rabbi Yitzchok bar Nachmoni, and one that was with him. Exactly who the two rabbis is not clear. There's a lot of several possibilities, three possibilities in the Gemara over there. But nevertheless, there's two opinions. What are the two opinions that the Gemara brings down? Chad Omar Kimemre Dahai Pesuka. One says, like it takes to say, what is the Shir of Shehiyah, to say this pasuk. The pasuk is quoted later on, soon after the second opinion. The Gemara quotes the pasuk. That's the pasuk Vayichru Apayim Arza that the Rambam quoted. But the understanding of the Kesef Mishnah L'chatchila is to read the pasuk would include the entire pasuk. Would mean that you start from that the Bnei Yisrael witnessed the fire consuming the korbanos that are on the mizbeach, and then the pasuk says Vayichru Apayim Arza. So the assumption is that when he says, and the Gemara, as the Kesef Mishnah reads the Gemara, that it says Chad Omar Kimemre Dahai Psukim, one of the two, Rabbi Yitzchok bar Nachmoni, and the one that was with him, one says it is as long as it takes to say this pasuk, which is understood, he means the entire pasuk. The Chad Omar, and one says, so I'm not sure who said what, but one says, Kimi Vayichru L'Seifa, from Vayichru to the end. So basically, you start with Vayichru, and the end of the pasuk is Kitov Kileilum Chazdei. That's so. According to one, you do the entire pasuk, and according to the second one, you only start from the middle of the pasuk, from Vayichru, and you do till the end. And then the Gemara goes. The Gemara brings down after both opinion. The Gemara brings down the full pasuk. It says, "V'chol b'nei Yisrael royim beredes ha'eish ukvod Hashem al habayis," and the entire Jewish people witnessed, they saw when the fire descended, and the glory of Hashem on the house. Vayichru apayim arzo, and they bowed on their faces to the ground, al haritzpa, on the floor. Vayishtachavu, and they prostrated. V'hodos l'Hashem kitov kilelum chazdei, and they thanked Hashem kitov kilelum chazdei. So the Gemara brings down this entire pasuk after bringing down the machlokes between Rabbi Yitzchok bar Nachmoni v'chad di'imei, the two opinions. So what they said, it looks like the first one holds that they said the whole pasuk, and the other one said that they said only from the part of Vayichru to the end, from the middle to the end of the pasuk. So of course the first one is a longer shir. So you're not going, if you go by the first one, you're not going to be chayav anything for staying in the Beis Hamikdash if you didn't take the time as it takes from the beginning of the pasuk, according to the first. According to the second one, even a half a pasuk is enough time for you to violate. But since we should be lenient. So why is it that the Rambam paskins from the middle of the pasuk. He gives us a shorter shear. He only says from the pasuk, from the middle of the pasuk, Vayichra till the end. Uh, so und das was der Rambam paskend lahachmir kimanda Omar Vayichra ul sefer. So how come the Rambam rules to be more stringent, like the person by Yichru L'Seifei, that from the middle to the end, which is less time? In other words, you violate more. Why did he paskin l'chumra? Beloy kimandomar kimemre dehai psuka. Not like the mandoma that says that you say the whole pasuk, the mashma that would appear kimemre de kula psuka mereshat seifer. That would mean the entire pasuk from the beginning all the ways to the end. So why would the Rambam paskund l'chumra? That was the question. So the Kesef Mishnah says no, that actually the first opinion didn't mean that you say the whole pasuk. He changes the meaning of the first opinion. It says kimemra take dehai kra. But what he meant to say, as the Kesef Mishnah says, because the Kesef Mishnah has to be lekula. Why would we say? Why would the Rambam paskin lechumra when we have two opinions? We can't paskin lechumra the chiyuv according to the more stricter opinion. So he changes around and he says that the first opinion holds from the beginning of pasuk till vayichru, and that is less than from Vayichru to the end of the pasuk. So it turns out that Rambam is paskening lekula. There is more time from the Rambam from Vayichru. So for enter the Kesef Mishnah, V'shema yesh loymar, perhaps we can say Sherabeinu mefarish, that the Rambam, he learns the man the Omar kimemre the high psuka, according to the opinion, the first opinion in the Gemara, that like saying this pasuk, ain't a kol pasuk. He doesn't mean the whole pasuk. Elo ad vayichru bilvad, just up to vayichru. V'im kain. So then, if that is the case, the Rambam learns havele manda omar bivayichru l'soifa. So the one who says vayichru l'soifa, that's the shiur shihiyah. He's makel. That's longer time of a shiur. Takes his more words from Vayichru till the end, rather than from the beginning to Vayichru. Pasuk avase, and he rules like him, and he learns rules like the opinion that says the longer part of the pasuk. So basically, the first opinion says you do the first part of the pasuk till Vayichru, and the second opinion says from Vayichru to the end, which is more words, as you can see in the quote from the Gemara that it brings down. Over here, the quote in the Gemara it brings down is in just before. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 words. And then from Vayichru Apayim to the end is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 words. So it takes longer. So the Rambam rules like the more lenient opinion. And then the Kesef Mishnah gives another suggestion based on what it says in the Yerushalmi. So weiter schreibt der Kesef Mishnah Yerushalmi chulu, according from the Yerushalmi, etc. So it says in the Yerushalmi, it says at kamo hishti shiur hishtachavoya, up to how much is the amount of the prostrating when we need a shear for hishtachavoya, how much is the shear? So Rabbi Simon b'shem Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, he says ad kidei, until the posik vayichru apayim arzo al haritzpo vayishtachavu. So he just cuts off. He just says until what they did vayichru apayim arzo. The posik goes on v'hoidis laHashem ki tov ki leilum chazdei, but he doesn't bring it down. According to Reb Simon, the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, he just stops by after vayishtachavu. He doesn't include v'hoidus Lashem. Rabbabohu Moisif, Rabbabohu, the other Amoira, he adds on Rabbi Simon, Ad v'hoidus Lashem kitov ki lo ilom chazdei. He adds kitov ki lo ilom chazdei. Okay, so according to these two opinions, and to align them with the two opinions in the Gemara, one says Kimemre and one says the whole pasuk, till the end. Yesh lefarish. The man the Omar Kimemre the high psuka, the one that says like takes to say this pasuk, Hainu kidei vayichra apayim arso vayishtachu bilvad. That means you say it up till vayichra apayim arso vayishtachu, and that means Kimemre. That's not as long as the hashto habimanda Omar mivayichru l'soifa. And now, so the one that says from vayichru all the way till the end, that's more words. The first one says from vayichru till vayishtachavu. The next one says all the way till vayijus Hashem kitov. So therefore, hashta habimanda Omar mivayichru l'soifa. The one that says from Vayichru to the end, Mekel. That's like the Rambam says, Umisveika posuk commander Mekel. From a suffix, he rules like the one is lenient because we cannot be machmir and be machayiv him for a place where there is a machloikis. So that's why the Rambam brings the bigger shir. So basically, the Rambam gives two possibilities. Either the first one holds the whole pasuk. No, sorry. That was the thought. That was the issue in the first place. But either we should say that the first one says you do it up to Vayichru, and the second one says from Vayichru, or we should say they both start from Vayichru, but the first one finishes by Vayishtachabu, and the second one goes all the ways till the end of the Pasuk Hilelum Chazdei, and that is longer. Shir, and the Rambam rules like the one who is more lenient. Says Ober Tzorich Bir. It made the Tirutz of the Mishnah. The Rebbe says we need to still explain both of these interpretation answers the Kesef Mishnah as Frag Meforshim, which is asked by the Meforshim. The Eshter Tirutz, the first answer as Kimemre the High Sukkah, to say what the meaning of this pasuk meant nor hascholos hakosuf. He says it means only, say like this pasuk, it means the beginning up till vayichru. But that doesn't say anywhere in the Gemara. The Gemara says kimeimra the high psuka. Psuka means the whole pasuk. Why all of a sudden you're saying till vayichru? So the Rebbe says, so the first answer as Kimemre the Psuka meant nor hascholos hakosuf only means the beginning. Why would we say so? He says l'chayre nito in Gemara kein mashmos in the Avdem. In the Gemara we see no hint that it means not the full pasuk, and so why would it end vayichro? Und der zweite Tirutz. And the second answer that the Kesef Mishnah says, as Kimemre the high psuka meant, when it says like the saying of the pasuk means nor kidei vayichra apayim arzu vayishtachu bilvad, that the first mandomar just means vayichra tu vayishtachu, not to the end is tzorichin. So that needs to be understood because we said the Gemara in the end brings the whole pasuk. Lefizeh. Pavos bring the Gemara them ganzen pasuk. So why would the Gemara even bring the whole pasuk? Nobody. There is no opinion that says that you start that when the Bnei Yisrael saw the fire, the Kved Hashem. Nobody says you say that. It's only starting from Vayichru. Pavos bring the Gemara them ganzen pasuk. Why would the Gemara bring the whole pasuk? She's doch not talking ein man the Omar. There's not even one on the Omar's halt as the Shir is Reisha the Kro. Nobody holds of the opinion, according to the second interpretation of the Kesef Mishnah, that the beginning of the pasuk it's only from Vayichru. Mit bringen dem ganzen pasuk, and by bringing the entire pasuk is the Gemara Gor Soisim. So what the Gemara is doing here is sort of closing it up, so we don't understand. Why would you bring the beginning of a whole pasuk? Oich, and also, Vazei likt dem Loshen Stami, in the general, it just says it plainly. The first man, the Omar, says, like it's to read the pasuk, and here we're saying it means just the middle words, not the beginning and not the end. Kememre the hype sukkah, it says like saying this pasuk. Nor the mittelste Werte from pasuk, it only means the middle words of the pasuk, or need the ratio, or need sefer the kra, and not the beginning and not the end of the pasuk. That's really not understood. So the Rebbe is discussing here what is the source of the Rambam. The Rambam gives the shear of the delay. He says that it's the shear of from Vayichru Apayim, and the Rebbe brings the source from the Gemara, but in the Gemara, uh, we have a problem. What exactly the Gemara means? It seems like in the Gemara that it would mean the whole pasuk, Hai Psuka, and that would be a linear opinion than the opinion of the second one that says V'vayichru. So why does the Rambam not say that? And both terutzim of the Kesef Mishnah, that the first opinion when it says Haikro, whether it means just the beginning of the pasuk or it just means the middle of the pasuk, it's not really fit in the Gemara. So we have to understand what is the reason, what is the source for the Rambam ruling that we do from Vayichru and not the whole pasuk, as the Rebbe will continue to explain. Before the Rebbe is going to explain the issue, the meaning of the Gemara and the Psak Din of the Rambam, the Rebbe first brings in a new, another question on the wording of the Rambam. The Rambam seems to talk about two things. He says about the time of the delay, that it is the shiur of the saying that what it takes to say the pasuk, and then he ends up in saying that is also ishtachavoya. So we explained, I mentioned earlier, and we'll see soon, that when the ishtachavoya is done in the other direction towards east, not in the regular direction, then it has to meet the time delay. So basically, the delay in time and the delay in the ishtachavoya is the same time. Why does the Rambam separate it? He says, how much is the shir shihiyah? And he says, this is the shir of ishtachavoya. Why does the Rambam not say that the shir of the shihiyah and the ishtachavoya, and then together, instead of first starting off with shihiyah, and then ishtachavoya? The Rebbe is going to medayik from the language of the Rambam that this is very, very precise, as the Rebbe will explain. So let's first look inside. Base. V'yeshleimar, as men vedos verstehen behagdem, will understand this by introducing Aleph, Adiuk in Divrei Harambam Hanal. First of all, a question in the language of the words of the Rambam. The Rambam says, "V'kamo shiur shihiyosei." How much is the amount of the delay of the to be violating the prohibition of being tomei in the Beis Hamikdash? So it says, "K'dei likros v'yichru," what it takes to read the pasuk v'yichru, etc. And then he concludes, "V'zeu shiur hishtachavoya." This is the shiur also for bowing down. Now, Pavos is the Rambam dos mechalik in zwei protim. Why is the Rambam breaking this up, dividing it into two details? Shir shihiyosei, the amount of the delay. And then it says, V'zehu shiur hishtachavoya. This is the shiur of the hishtachavoya. Und sagt nicht gleich wie betchilo, and it doesn't say as in the beginning, he starts off with Kamoshir Shehi Yosei. He should say Vishtir Hishtachavoya Kedei Likris Chulud. Now, what's the shear of the delay, and how much does it? The shear of Hishtachavoya is Kedei Likris from Vayichru. Why does he break it up? On Afal Pi as B'divra Rambam Kumtes Behemshech, that in the words of the Rambam, this comes as a continuation in der zweiter Halacha to the Werter. It comes in to the other Halacha, to the words. So what the Rambam is writing over here, it says, Lo hechzer ponov elo hishtachave derech yitziose klape chutz. That if he did not turn around when he bowed, that he's violating, but he didn't turn around to direction towards the Kodesh HaKadoshim, towards the west. But he didn't turn around, but he bowed derech yitziosa on the way out to the wrong side. Klape chutz, towards the outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Over there, eine chayiv im ken shoho kashir. He's only chayiv unless he waited for the amount of, like it says, the pasuk vayichrun, the kama shir shiyos. So what's the shear of the delay? So basically, according to this, the Rambam starts off by saying shehi yosei, because that's what he just finished saying, that you have to delay. The shtachavoah has to be delayed. So it says how much delay, but it doesn't fit to say kamo hishtachavoya. The hishtachavoya is the shir shiyose. But the Rebbe says that's not a good answer. Why? Is those gufanit move on? That itself, the previous halach is not understood. He should have said immediately the language the Rambam should have said, Eine chayiv, he's not chayiv, elo im kain sho kishir ishtachavoya. Instead of saying kishir, and then you say the shiur is the line that it takes of ishtachavoya. The kamo shiura, how much is the shir of the ishtachavoya, or the kamo shir ishtachavoya? Instead of saying there's a shir of shaha, and then this is also the shir ishtachavoya, you should have said immediately that that's the shir of ishtachavoya. So we should have said the kama shir of a kama shir ishtachavoya, kedei likris. That is the shir is to learn. Und damals wollte es euch gewen behesem l'shein ha-mishnah, and that would also fit with the language of the Mishnah. Hishtachave, oishesho bichdei hishtachavo. Either he bowed, or he delayed what it takes. Hishtachavo means if he bowed towards the right direction. As the Gemara explains, that's when he, as the Rambam is talking about, when he turned around. But the word shoh, the Rambam didn't have to say shoh kishir. The Rambam should have said shoh kishir ishtachavo. And then you would ask, what's the shtir ishtachavo? Here he says, what's the shir of shehiyah? And then he says, this is the shir ishtachavo. But, so number one, why does the Rambam divide it up into two parts? And number two, the Rebbe says, "Bepashtus geit divrei harambam v'kamo shir shiyosi kidei." When the Rambam explains shehiyah, it's not just on this particular halacha, nitnor ev dvorav b'halacha zu, not just on this halacha. We're trying to say, what is the shir? When lo hechzir ponov elish tachav derech yitziose klapi chutz, that if he doesn't turn around his face towards the Beis Hamikdash, towards the Kodesh HaKadoshim, but he bows on his way out towards the outside, ein chayiv elim kin shor kishir, then he's not chayiv only shor kishir. That's not the only part that Rambam wants to explain how much the shir of shor kishir. Nor of them ganzen din von Isur Shehiyah. He's talking about Bechlal when we talk about you can't delay. Not only in this specific instant, you're not allowed when the ishtachavoya, how long it takes, how long you have to be ishtachavoya in order to violate if you're facing the tzad mizrach outside on the way outside. But der ganze Ding von Isushiri hier, was hat gesagt in der Friedrich Halacha, that he said in the previous Halacha canal, that you're not allowed to delay him, sure, and if you delayed, then he'll be chayiv. So why did the Rambam not write over there what the shir of the Shi'i is? So, no, so the Rambam is applying to everything that he talks about Shi'i before. Aber favos sagt der Rambam dem Shir Shihiyah v'shtachavoya. Why does the Rambam say the amount of the delay and the bow dafke in der halacha, specifically in this halacha behemshech to dem din? This is as a follow-up to the halacha when lo hechzir ponov el hishtachave derech yitziose klape chutz. That if he didn't turn around his face and he bowed towards the direction outside, towards the outside, only if he delayed like a shear. Und sagt es nicht in der Friedrich Halacha, it doesn't say it in the previous Halacha. Behemshech zum etzem isur von Shehiyah. When we talk about you're not allowed to delay, forget about delaying when ishtachavoy in the wrong direction. But the also lishus chulu v'im shal chulu. V'kamo shir shilo sekedei likros v'yichru. This in order for them to read the pasuk v'yichru, that pasuk over there. Why doesn't he say it over there? So the Rebbe asks, why does he divide it up into two parts? Kamashir Shi Yosei, and then it says Vizehu, it's Shirash Tachavoya. And why doesn't he say it together? One, as the Rebbe had first. And number two, why doesn't he explain the Shir of Shehiyah when he talks first of all that you're not allowed to delay, and he waits till this din when you turn around and you're looking backwards? Now, the Rebbe is going to say, interesting, that what happens, we're saying now, if he faced might have the Kodesh HaKadoshim the right direction, then we don't need a shear, and hishtachavoya. But if he faces klapi chutz on his way out, then and he bows, then it has to be in the shear of the shehiyah, saying the pasuk. So what happens? The question is, what happens when he does wait the amount of the from the reading the pasuk tishis shoya? Is the isur then mitzad hishtachavoya? Because although normal hishtachavoya is to the right direction, but if you're doing it in the wrong direction, you need to have a shear in order to make it hishtachavoya. So then you'll be chayiv mitzad hishtachavoya, because you prostrated yourself. Now, prostrating yourself, if it's towards ma'ariv, you don't need a shear. But if you're towards the chutz, then you need a shear, and that will make up hishtachavoya. Or there's no hishtachavoya towards the outside. If you delay, the chiv is going to be not for hishtachavoya. The chiv is going to be for delaying. And as the Rebbe will say, what will be nafkamina lidina? If it's hishtachavoya, but the question is if you don't have not the right amount, because normal hishtachavoya, if it's towards the outside, needs a full shear. You did have, so it'll be a chatzi shear. If it's a chatzi shear, it's still osur. But if we're going to say that it's b'chlal not hishtachavoya, over there, it's just the amount of the delay. If you didn't delay, it's not like a chatzi shear, it's a chatzi malacha. There's no delay there. We'll see. The Rebbe will explain all these things in the next one. But let's look inside. Gimel. B'yashleimar habir b'zeh. We can say the explanation. From Pashtus Loshen HaRambam, this the language of the Rambam. He says like this: so first, you're not allowed to delay, or to prostrate, Either of the three things you're not allowed to do, or to go the long way. And the Rambam continues, V'im shoha, what if he did delay? Oy sheyotze barucha, or he went out on the long way. Avapish loisha, that doesn't matter. You just went the longer way. You didn't delay, but you didn't go in the shorter way. You're still violating. Oy shehechzir ponov lehechel b'hishtachave, or you turned your face to the heichel and you bow down. In other words, on your way out, instead you turn yourself around and you bow to the heichel. Avapish leisho, then you don't have to delay. Chayiv kodesh, you'll be chayiv kodesh. Basically, shoho is one condition to be one way to be chayiv kodesh. Another chayiv kodesh is even if you don't delay, but you're going in a longer way. And another way of being chayiv kodesh, if you're prostrating towards your mishtachave, towards the Ma'ariv, then there's no delay. You're still going to be violating. Izmuvon is understood. As though is nit ein chiyuv, was hot nit memari given lotzis bederach kitzora. This is not one obligation because you didn't rush to go out the shorter way. And was kann sich aufstellen in drei Fanen. You can say that it's all you didn't go the shorter way, and in three ways you didn't do the shorter way. You either delayed, or you prostrated, or you went the long way. Shoha hishtachava yotze deracharucha. You delayed, you bowed yotze deracharucha. No, that's not. Nor sis drei besondere isurim v'chiyuvim. There's three separate prohibitions and obligations for the person for violating it. Drei besondere shemes. There are three separate names. The names are different. They're separated isurim, different names of isurim. There's achiyuf and shehiyah. One obligation, one liability is for delaying. Mitzadem zman v'srotzich farzam. That is because of the time that he delayed in Migdash. That he delayed in the Migdash while being Tomei. That's one prohibition, one obligation, one guilt. Ishtachave. Second violation, that is because the act of bowing, of the prostrating. And there's an obligation for going the long way, because you left it in a long way and not the shorter way. So what happens, the question becomes now, what happens when he didn't turn his face around towards regular hishtachavo, towards the ma'ariv, but he prostrated on the way outside, towards the mizrach. Then he'll be chayiv only if he delayed, like he stated, the amount of time. So for what name, what isur is he chayiv? You can learn this in two ways. Aleph, the isur v'chiyuv is mitzad der hishtachavo. The prohibition and the liability, the obligation is because of the prostrating. Nor hishtachavo is klapi chutz, but if you're bowing outside, it won't be considered the hishtachavo only when you delayed as the time that it takes to read Vayikra. But once you delayed, it becomes a hishtachavo. But beis the chiv is net nevtzad der hishtachavo. Then, if you delayed, it's not because you prostrated. Was pasnit klapi chutz. Towards the outside, there's no hishtachavo, nor mitzad shehiyah, but it's because of the delay. So it's not the isur hishtachavo, but the isur shehiyah. V'nafkimina la'alochit l'kama sivdala. The Rebbe said it'll be the alocha whether it's a chatzi shiur or a chatzi melacha, as we'll see in sivdala. And the Rebbe now is going to explain that this is actually fits in the two languages in the Gemara. On the Mishnah over there, and the Rebbe wants to say the two languages One of them holds that if you delayed, it becomes a hishtachavo, and you're chayiv for hishtachavo. And the other lashon holds no, that there's no hishtachavo, and it's only the time. And the Rebbe explains now because otherwise, the wording in the Gemara, the difference seems there's no difference between what the Gemara says. So let's see the quote from the Gemara. The Rebbe is going to bring in also with Halton Kapdo. You have to just stay focused over here on the Gemara. It's a very fine distinction over here, but the Rebbe is going to say this difference is the chiyuv becomes a hishtachavo chiyuv, since when you're talking klape chutz, once it meets the shehiyah zman, or it states an isur of shehiyah. In the Tzvei L'Shenis HaGemara, we can say the two languages of the Gemara, B'divrei Rava, of their Mishnah. So Rava basically qualifies the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Hishtachava, he bowed, and that's understood that he bowed in the regular way. That would be considered a delay. That would be considered a chiyuv. Oyi shesho bichdei hishtachavo, or he delayed as long as it takes to be mishtachave, which means not just mishtachave, and that is when he's bowing to the other direction. That's what the Rava says. Zog the Gemara Amar Rava. So the Gemara says this is Rava. Rava qualifies there. He says, when is ishtachave alone an isur, considered a delay, and when do we need shoha b'chdei ishtachavo? Depending where direction he's bowing. Zog the Gemara Amar Rava, says Rava, lo yishanu elo sheishtachave klapi pnim. That this is only when do we say that hishtachave, the first word in the Mishnah, that hishtachave is an interruption. It's called a shehiyah. I mean, it's a delay. Is lo yishanu elo sheishtachave klapi pnim. If he bows towards the inside, towards the ma'ariv, then hishtachava alone would be an interruption. That because he did that, that's enough. No time limit. But if he is towards the outside, then it has to be shah ishtachavo. Shah in loy shah loy. If he delayed, yes, loy shah loy. Now, ikadam asnilo asefa. So that is Rava stipulating on the word hishtachave. It says hishtachave is a interruption, is a delay. Comes Rava and he says, when is that a delay? If it's done towards the pnim. However, if it's not done towards the pnim klape chutz, over there you need shah. Shah in loy shah loy. The second language, the Me'ikadam Asnila Asefa, and the second part, we're saying Hishtachave, it says Oy Shesha Bichdei Hishtachavo. The other interruption the Mishnah said would be one with Hishtachavo, the second interruption would be Shesha Bichdei Hishtachavo. So others say he said, the Rava says that the din on the Sefer. Oy Shesha Bichdei Hishtachavo. The fact that the Mishnah says that he delays and he was the B'dei Hishtachavo, that will be interruption. Miklal Hishtachavo Gufo Boyishiyah. So that means that Hishtachavo itself needs a delay. Shesho B'dei Hishtachavo. So that means that he delayed the time that it takes to hishtachavo. It means that hishtachavo has a time frame, because you say he delayed as it takes to hishtachavo. Miklal hishtachavo gufa bo yishiyah. So Omar Rava says Rava lo yishonu. He's saying basically the same thing. Elo shehishtachave klapi chutz. If he bowed towards the outside, then the ishtachavo needs a shihiyah, avol klapi pnim, but towards the inside. Afagav loisho, even though he didn't delay, it's just for bowing, you're already going to be liable because that's considered a delay. You would be chayiv, be also. And this is what the Mishnah says. Hishtachava klapi pnim. The first part is hishtachava klapi pnim. That is the just ishtachavo. Oy shesho kedei ishtachavo, or he delayed the time that it takes ishtachavo, which is reading the pasuk. Behach ishtachavo the klapi chutz chayv. Und dennoch ist die Gemara Mamshich, what is Heichidom Ishtachavod is Beshichu? What is the Ishtachavod that has the Shehiyah? As we said before, reading from Vayichru, the whole Pasuk on Vayichru, as we quoted before. So what's the difference between the two languages? They're basically saying the same thing, that if you do Hishtachavod Klapi Pnim, then just ishtachava. That would be considered a shihiyah, a delay, and you'd be chayiv for that. It would be osur. And if it was klapi chutz, then it's not going to be osur unless you delay. It takes the time, whatever the shihiyah is. So what's the difference if we say it on the first word ishtachavo, on the word ishtachavo leshono? Or we do it on the second shah. But the Rebbe says, but based on the above, we can say, as there my benayu tzvisha the tzvei l'shenis is, what's the difference between the two languages? That according to the first lashon, there is no ishtachavo on the outside at all. Noit nershten lashon. As dire Rava Gatek the word ishtachave, that it goes on the first word on ishtachave, shebereish in the beginning. So we're saying loishanu el sheishtachave klapi pnim, that he had to bow towards the inside. Then ishtachave alone would be a interruption, would be a shihiyah, delay. That would be a chiyuv for itself, kumtois. So it turns out as klapi chutz is nitot the ganze gedel from ishtachavo, that there is no ishtachava on the outside. The first lashon holds that to be mishtachava is only ishtachava kapi pnim, but not kapi chutz. Und das meint mit dem Siyum, and this is what is meant with the end. Avol ishtachava kapi chutz, but if he bowed to the outside, shoin l'sholoi, it's only about shoah because there's no ishtachava on the outside. As kapi chutz is done not the geder achim mitzad shoah, but towards the outside, the only obligation is because you delayed. Rashi, as Rashi says, but bowing towards the outside mizrach, that's not hishtachavoy. So basically, and if he did lilay, then he will be chayav for shihiyah, and if he didn't delay, then there's no other chiyuv. So the first, if the stipulation is on ishtachava, that the ishtachavo is Rava is saying is only bifnim, klapi bifnim, not klapi chutz, that means there's no such a thing as ishtachavo klapi chutz at all. And what the Gemara means, but if he delays, is not that it makes it up into a ishtachavoya. What it makes it is a new chiyuv of a delay, because the shihiyah. That's the first lashon. Leuten zweiten lashon, but according to the second language, as those geht, if they're safe, that this goes on the second part. Oy shesho bichdei ishtachavo. The lady ishtachavo, miklal, the ishtachavo gufa boy shihiyah. So that tells us that the ishtachava itself needs, in other words, in order for it to be a ishtachava, that needs a delay. Kumtuis. So from this it turns out as oich klapi chutz is the ageder for ishtachava. Also, if you're outside, it is defined as ishtachava. Vorum evdem zokt Rava lo yishanu. He says on this eloshi ishtachava klapi chutz. that when it says that with a delay is that ishtachva klape chutz, that's when it's ishtachavo. Damul zokt men as ishtachavo gufa bo yishihiyah. Then we're saying the ishtachavo needs shihiyah. Avol klape pnim avagav d'loisha. But b'fnim you don't need to delay. Nor the ishtachavo klape chutz is davke when zehot shihiyah ashir ishtachavo, when it has a shir ishtachavo. So the Rebbe explains beautifully the two differences. According to the first day, if it doesn't have a shear, it's not ishtachavoya, and therefore the chiyuv is only because of delay. According to the second lashon, it is ishtachavoya, but the issue is it needs a shear, and if there's no shear, it's not. It doesn't. Doesn't meet the criteria of the ishtachavoya klape chutz. This is also very precisely the language of Rashi in the words in the Gemara in the second Lashon. If he was mishtachve klape pnim, for the towards the inside, or he delayed the mount of shtachavo in the shtachavo of chutz is chayv. Zokt Rashi on this language, v'ochi komar ha'ishtachavoyo klape pnim, that ishtachavo towards the inside koldu. Oy sheloi hishtachave v'sho, any amount going to go. Oy sheloi hishtachave v'sho kedei shir chiyuv hishtachavo, or he didn't bow and take the time shir chiyuv hishtachavo, the hanach klape chutz, the boy shir chiyuv. The outside needs a shir of chiyuv of hishtachavo. So, was l'chayr is not move on. What is the loshen kedei shir chiyuv hishtachavo? What is it? Why is there a shir of chiyuv hishtachavo? Klape chutz is doch nitolo diver Rashi in the Mershon loshen. In the first loshen, in the according to Rashi, the ganze chiyuv hishtachavo nor shehiyah. As we quoted before, Eloi, that if it didn't, it's not ishtachavoyim. So we see that in the second lashon of Rashi Gedav Zogun, Kedei Shir Shehiyah, not the Shir Chiyuv Ishtachavo, but Shir Chiyuv, because it's not about Ishtachavo. Weil der ze besim l'shoyn od Rashi Gedav Zogun the boy Shir Shehiyah. Not Kedei Shir Ishtachavo. Rashi, you see clearly that in the second Madoma, Rashi learns that it becomes a Shir Ishtachavo. Yeshlema as the Rashi is der mit Madgish, as Euch Klapi Chutz is der Chiyuv mitzad Ishtachavo. Nor the Ishtachavo boy Shir Chiyuv. That what Rashi is trying to tell us, Rashi is trying to emphasize that also towards the outside is the Chiyuv is for Ishtachavo. But Ishtachavo needs a Shir Chiyuv. So, on Afal but the Rebbe cautions us over here, even though as Kishor Kishir Shehiyah Afilu Lo Yishtachave, if he delays, he doesn't have to bow. He's a doch belavo chayv mishum Shehiyah. He would be chayv for Shehiyah, just even if he didn't bow, just for delaying. Yes, loymar loydem zweiten loschen. So, what's the point in making it a prohibition of ishtachavoya? It doesn't need ishtachavoya. He's delayed, and it's already chiv shehiyah. So we can say v'bal shehiyah is shem isur b'fnei atzmei. Since the shehiyah is its own isur, is there isur dafke ben omat kedei shehiyah? The Rabbi Machadish that it's only going to be if he's standing still, but the time it takes to delay. But if he's doing action, and then he's bowing down. Verdos nit gerechnet als Shehiyah, that's not considered a delay. Und der Chiv Damus is nit mishum Shehiyah, nor mitzatem shem ishtachavo. And then the obligation is not because of the delay, but because ishtachavo is not going to be chayiv for delay. That's not the Chiv at that point. The Rebbe attaches the two ideas, whether it's when you delay, when you klape chutza, you delay, whether it's a shtachavoya, whether it's a prostrating, but it has the shear, or it's just the shear. The Rebbe hinges it on the two girsois, to the versions on Rava on the Mishnah over there in the Gemara, and the Rebbe explains now in the end that. What's the point of making it into ishtachavoya if he's delayed anyway? So why do we need the shem ishtachavoya here? And the Rebbe is machadish that it won't be considered shehiyah only if he's standing. If he's bowing down, it's not shehiyah. That's why the chiv will be because of the ishtachavoya. Nor mitzad shem ishtachavoya. So what's the difference if we actually say that this is prostrating towards the outside that needs a shear, or we're going to say it's just a shear? And the Rebbe says has an afkamina whether it's considered a chatzi shear when it's not have the shear, or it's a chatzi malacha, it's not bechlal. Einer von den Adalad, einer von den afkamina bepoil zwischen die zwei Fanim Yeshlema. One of the practical difference between these two ways is legabe chatzi shir. When it comes to the issue of chatzi shir, was kaimelon Rabbi Yochanan. The loch is like Rabbi Yochanan as chatzi shir is also min haTorah, but a half a shir is proven the Torah. And loit the days as das is lav davki b'midah da'achila. Some there are opinions that say when is a chatzi shir also min haTorah when you're consuming, when you're eating something. So if it's treif, for example, even if you eat a half a kazayis, you'd still be an isur min haTorah. But the other opinion says that it doesn't necessarily apply to isurim, even to eating, but also into all isurim. Is yadua as the isur is nor when dos is a chatzi shir. So when do we say that the chatzi shir is also when there's the amount is lacking, the quantity is missing? Sees the zelba pa'ula maisa. It's the same act and the same doing. Nor the shir is nit b'shleimus, but you don't have a full shleimus. Al derech achilas chatzi zayis from a davar isur, similar to eating a half an olive of a isur. So it's the same, but you didn't eat a full zayis, you ate a half a zayis. That's what's going to be awesome. Other than hoitzim reshusa yochid reshusa rabim pachos mikashir. Let's say he was carrying from the private domain to the public domain less than the amount that you would be chayiv for carrying. Aber when the chatzi is nit in them shiur, but if the half is not that it's a half of the amount, but in the etzem mamaisi you're not doing a full act, al der chatzi malacha, you're doing half a malacha, that multis does nit also min haTorah, then it's not going to be proven of the Torah. So what is in our case? We need the done in our case. Leut nersten öfen. As there isur v'chiyuv is mishum shehiyah, according to the first way, that the prohibition and the obligation for being betome in the is because of shehiyah, is oipsis weniger von kedei shehiyah. If it's not kedei shehiyah, less than that, is das nit kein chatzi shir, then it's not a half a shir, nor she is bechlal nit der inyan. It's not, you didn't delay, that's not called delay. Delay is part of the, what makes it the malacha, what makes it the prohibition here. Warum she is nit a kamas dike medida, was wird geschaffen von ziruf chelke zman. The delay is not a quantity measured that is created from combining portions of time to say that's what makes it. Nor a matzev was be'echos was wird durch a bestimmtes man. It's a qualitative situation when you go through a certain time. Weniger davon, if you're less than that, heißt das nicht kein Shehia. It's not called delay. It's not delaying. B'meila hat kein Sinn nicht sagen Chatzi Shehia. So it doesn't really have any logic to say it was half a delay. It's not a half a delay. Delay is not, it's either delayed or not delayed. It doesn't mean a half a delay. So that why over here would not say Chatzi Shehia. Aber ob man soll sagen, das ist mishum ishtachavo, that the prohibition is bowing, not ishtachavo, gufa boy yishihia, but the bowing needs a delay. Val boy yishir chiyuv, you need a shir to make it the ishtachavo count. Val der chiyuv is nit mishum dem matzav shihia. The obligation is not because of the shia. The shihia is nor a shiur chiyuv. Over there, it's only the shiur chiyuv. When are you going to be chayiv for the shtachavo? In the shtachavo is b'shas es is faran achatzi shir. So when there is a half a shir, is dos oich a geder from shtachavo. So it's still bowing, but you're not bowing long enough. Nor has felt the shlemus in shiur l'chayv der shtachavo. It's lacking the shiur to obligate him for the bowing. The shiur of the amount of the obligation. B'meila is oich chatzi shiur also min. So therefore, also half a shiur would be also min. So the Rebbe, I think I said it before the other way around, but what the Rebbe is saying now is very clearly that if the shear is in hishtachavoya, that you need a shear to make up what is called bowing. So if there's less than a shear, or according to the first option that we were talking the whole time, then you would still be also minat Torah. If you went klape chutz and you didn't meet the shear, you'd still be also minat Torah because it's bowing it is, but you don't have the shear bowing. On the other hand, if it's part of delay, can't say it's part of delay. It's either delayed or not. It's a qualitative thing. So therefore, you're not going to be chayiv. So these are the differences in the two ways that we explained it. But the Rebbe now is going to come up. There's actually a third possibility which the Rebbe attributes to the opinion of the Rambam.